Welcome, everyone. It's 2024 finally, the first day of 2024. And welcome to KC Chase to the Pennant, where we're going to break down all the Royals news, everything that happens with the Kansas City Royals. I'm Cristian Martinez here at a coffee shop, and with me is Kevin. How you doing, Kev? How was your New Year's?
It was good. I got to hang out with some friends. We usually do like a nice dinner kind of event and then kind of hang out at the house. So 2023 is in the books. Now looking forward to 2024, especially as a fan of the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, again, I think it's finally great to kind of put 2023 away as a Royals fan because that was a tough year for us. But now we get to embrace 2024 and see what's in store. But with that being said, I know that we talked on our first episode of Chase to the Pennant a lot about, some of the bigger moves the Royals made, getting Seth Lugo, getting Michael Waka, and all these other guys. But we're going to talk more about some of the trades they made in the offseason. And we're going to start off with the Braves because we made two big trades with the Atlanta Braves, and that was the acquisition of Kyle Wright and Nick Anderson. We'll start with Kyle Wright, but when I first saw this trade happen, I was so happy to see a guy like him come to KC. But what were your initial thoughts, Kev, when Wright was named a Royal?
I was really excited too. I kind of realized with Kyle Wright, because of his injury, 2024 would be kind of lost for him. But this is a potential ace. This was a guy who in 2022 posted a 3.19 ERA and a 2.9 FWAR and 180 innings with the Braves. He's always been a top prospect. He's a guy that has ties to the new director of scouting, Brian Bridges, who was with Atlanta. I believe Brian Bridges was part of the team that drafted him. So I like that they get a guy, the new people in the front office get somebody that they're familiar with. He's a tremendous risk just because of the injury, and he's had some inconsistency over his career, especially last year. You saw like the ERA 6.97, just didn't have his best stuff. But I like what he provides. I think he would mesh really well with his pitching staff, and nobody's really depending on him to be an ace of the rotation. You're looking at in 2025 for him to be a 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 guy, which I think is a better fit for him. So I really like that transaction a lot, even if it's not going to see any fruit this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to pull up his stats here, a graphic, our first graphic for the show. But you look at the numbers here between 2022 and 2023, and you see a lot of promise. I think for the Royals, this is a great move, even though he's going to be out in 2024 with he had surgery on his pitching arm, had a torn capsule, and he'll obviously be out for the entire year. But looking forward to 2025, I think this is a great move for the Royals because, I mean, you were talking about some of his numbers in 2023 too. I mean, look at his whip. He had a 1.16, which when I was looking at some of who the leaders, he was pretty high up there for the MLB. And even his 21 wins, I think that to me is what stands out is he's a guy who can play significant innings and can, get you out of jams and get you a win. And I think that you even look at his WAR and whatnot, it just shows how much he meant to the Braves in 2022. And even his 174 strikeouts, that's pretty impressive on its own. And while he did have a rough 2023, I still think he has a chance to rebound and come back from his injury. It's just, I think this is a good gamble if you're JJ Piccolo, because he's a guy that if he can replicate 2022, then, he's a guy that you can put in the 5 spot in the future. Or if Singer, if we trade Singer, we have a guy like Kyle Wright who can immediately fill in. Looking at his pitches too, that's another thing that I was impressed, you know, throughout the years with Atlanta and throughout his career, I should say. He had a lot of issues with his mechanics. He had a lot of issues with finding that real kind of pitching arsenal. And I think the addition of a curveball and a sinker really helped him kind of make him a better pitcher in 2022. I was watching a video from Valley Sports South. He did an interview with some of the Valley Sports guys,
Yeah.
and he was talking about how he added more pitches, how he didn't want to just rely on a four seamer and a changeup, and he wanted to make things different, and he wanted to make it harder for batters to play against him, and adding that curveball, adding the sinker, really paid dividends. And I know that I think one of the best pitches that he has though, and I know he doesn't use it a lot, is his slider, because he doesn't use it often, but he really uses it when he needs to put someone away. When there's a 1-2 count, or there's a 2-2 count, or there's a full count, he's able to use that slider kind of in the low zone efficiently, and I think that's what makes him really good. And overall, I think the addition of Kyle Wright, I think he was in a trade for Jackson Kowar,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, Kowar, a former first round pick for the Royals, he's a guy that, we thought would be great. And unfortunately, he just doesn't fit in the Royals organization anymore. And hopefully, hopefully Kowar gets a chance out there in Atlanta.
Yeah, and what I like the most about the Wright deal is it feels very similar to like the Cole Reagans deal. Like it's something that Tampa does, right? Tampa Bay, where they get guys who have maybe an injury history, or maybe they were a top prospect, or they showed they were pretty good a couple years ago, but then they had a bad year due to injury, and they take a risk, and it pays off. It paid off last year with Cole Reagans. He had 2 Tommy John surgeries, and he was kind of a guy who was once a top prospect and kind of lost some luster. And I think Kyle Wright's a little bit more ahead of where Cole Reagans is. So I agree. I think it's a great move. It's a great long-term move, and it's a guy who can really boost their rotation in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, and just I'm looking right now at Baseball Savant, and I'm looking at some of the numbers that they have right now. And I think one of the most impressive things, even just looking at his pitches, is that he knows what to throw it to who. So, for example, I'm looking at his changeup. He throws his changeup a lot to left-handed batters more than he does to righties. So he has that kind of IQ in him too. But regardless, yeah, I just think this is a great move for Kansas City. And you make a good point too. I really like to bring this back to Cole Reagans, because Cole, Rangers didn't need him anymore. They were already kind of beefed up in the pitching rotation, and Cole kind of was the odd man out. And then he comes to Kansas City, he cleans up his mechanics. He starts to improve, and he shows that promise the minute that he hits the field. And that, to me, that gives me faith that this Royals pitching staff will take Kyle Wright, help him kind of get better health wise, especially his pitching arm, and then he will get at a better spot. But even then, it's just I'm excited to see what they do with him. And again, Kyle Wright's the kind of guy that I'm glad that he's a Royal. And we'll talk more about kind of how this will impact the future. But I want to talk now about Nick Anderson, because that's someone else. That's another guy that, again, I watched a lot of tape from. He was a former Ray, ended up going to the Braves for a year in 2023. He missed 2022 with a torn UCL, but then comes back, has a good season for the Braves. And I'll pull up the stats here shortly. But what were your initial thoughts about getting Nick Anderson with the Royals too, to help kind of beef up the bullpen?
I like the familiarity with Q, having the familiarity with him from his days in Tampa Bay. I think that's good. That it seems right now that Q has been there for a year, I think he's having a better sense of which guys probably he likes around the league, and which guys maybe he's like, hey, we can pass on. Anderson is great for one big reason: he doesn't walk guys. I mean, you look at his walk per nine. His walk per nine is career is 2.35. That's very low. It's a very below average. I mean, a below average in a good way, walk per nine. And now something the Royals bullpen has struggled with traditionally. I believe last year, if you look at the Royals bullpen, the bullpen ranked 29th in the league in walks per nine. So the fact is they're getting a guy that's not going to give out free passes is really good. His arsenal is limited. He really only has 2 pitches, but he has 2 good pitches, right? And then it's like,
Yeah.
and he knows what he is. I think it gives the Royals bullpen some flexibility. It kind of felt last year when, if Chapman hit a wall or if Scott Barlow hit a wall, it was kind of like crossing fingers and just hoping things went our way, batted ball luck wise. Anderson gives some depth, so it gives another arm that Q can kind of depend on in the bullpen, and again, it kind of gives some. And he's a veteran who's been in big moments. He's played on playoff teams in Tampa and Atlanta, so that's also going to be good for some of the young arms in the bullpen like Carlos Hernandez and James MacArthur. who showed some promise last year, but need to put it together over a full season.
Yeah, and you talk about that two pitch arsenal. He, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a curveball and a four seamer. He uses like 1%, maybe a sinker, but that's rare. But he really does have a two pitch arsenal. And to me, getting Nick Anderson really shows me that JJ is serious about beefing up the bullpen. And again, you trade him for cash considerations. I think it was what, $100,000, which
Yeah.
is, I think, yeah, it's not a lot. I mean, it's a good. I think it's a good trade because again, you need a guy who's reliable like Nick Anderson, and you look at his stats as well. You know, looking between 2021 and 2023, 2023 he had a really good season, even playing not a lot of innings, only 35. But you compare that to like 2021, had 6 innings pitched, a 4.50 ERA, one whip, and then one strikeout. And then you look at 2023, and he really bounced back and showed that he can be of value to any team, playoffs or not. 4 wins, 3.06 ERA, 35 innings pitched, and 36 strikeouts. Those aren't crazy numbers per se, but when you make him your middle reliever, then you start to realize how important he is to the Royals and how important he will be if the Royals want to make a run here in 2024 and beyond. And then in 2020, even then during the COVID year, 2 wins, 1 loss, 0.55 ERA, played 19 games, had 6 saves, 26 strikeouts. That's in a .49 WHIP. That's, to me, the Royals see the potential in Nick Anderson to rebound even further and build upon his season. And when you watch his tape, I mean, even his four seamer, he throws it a little more in the middle and kind of higher, and then his curveball obviously goes a lot lower. But you see more potential in Nick to kind of lead the pack for the Royals in 2024, where you see a revamp, where you're seeing a lot of new guys coming in, a lot of the old guys from last year and the years before, like the Dayton Moore era. Those guys are slowly kind of heading out from
Yeah.
KC, and you need a guy like Nick Anderson to set the tone. But I think the thing too, again, is the playoff, his kind of experience in the playoffs, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's so key, and I think that's been a big priority, and that was something I know JJ mentioned a lot, was saying, hey, we want to be led by our young core, but you do need veterans to kind of set the tone. And we had guys like Zach Greinke, who obviously is a veteran. But other than that, it's like some of the veterans that we did have, they didn't really have a whole lot of postseason experience. Scott Barlow didn't have really postseason experience. Taylor Clark really didn't. So I think I like the idea of them kind of saying, okay, let's bring in some guys that have been in winning organizations and help build that culture too throughout our organization, not just at one or two positions.
It is. I just wanted to mention this, right? It is crazy how quick of a changeup it has been this offseason for this, just this team in general in terms of the bullpen. You remember in 2023, you mentioned it. I mean, the only guys that we can really rely on were guys that, one guy ended up getting traded in Chapman, and then everyone else, it kind of felt like you were having to pick your poison because even watching the games itself, you felt like this bullpen just didn't have the longevity to really eat those innings. And now it's just completely different. Just looking at the potential bullpen for 2024, James McArthur, John McMillan, Nick Anderson, you add Will Smith, someone that we'll talk here in a moment, Matt Sauer, Carlos Hernandez, Steven Cruz, Jacob Brents, and then Tyler Zuber. That is such a big improvement from last year. And I know last year was only yesterday, but it is such a big change. And to me, again, JJ mentioned it a lot during the offseason, prior to the Royals season ending, is that he wanted to revamp this bullpen to be more playoff caliber. And he did it. I think he did it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, getting guys like Nick Anderson, Will Smith, who's been part of 3 World Series titles, Chris Stratton, who's part of the Rangers and part of the Giants organizations. I agree. And I think that's really key. You have to have a young core, for long-term being competitive in the long term, but you got to have people that can kind of help get you there too. And even those organizations like the Rays and the Orioles, they do have veterans too. that are kind of there. And look at the Diamondbacks last year, bringing in a guy like Longoria and Lourdes Gurriel, who were veterans who had been in playoffs. That was a huge boost for a young team. So I really agree with you that they're doing the right things, especially in the bullpen.
Yeah, and then again, you forgot to mention even Chris Stratton. I mean, that's another guy who the Royals made a move for, and he's here in Kansas City now. And then even Mister Eat Innings, Jordan Lyles. I mean, if you don't want him playing the five, toss him in there with the relief pitchers, and he can eat up innings. It's kind of the only thing I don't want to say he's good at, but I mean, if there's one positive for Jordan Lyles is that he is able to eat up innings when he needs to, and I think he serves even a better role as that kind of middle reliever, eating up those kind of tough innings in the sixth and the seventh, and kind of transitioning for someone as a closer. But yeah, this is just getting Nick Anderson is just a big get for the Royals, and for the amount of money that they had to send to Atlanta. I thought that was easy. I saw some people saying that they were trading Nick Anderson and Kyle Wright to go get Shohei, and I think you know, as much as Atlanta fans can think that they're going to get every great player like the Dodgers and whatnot, I think it it's great to see at least that we get those players. And again, the health reasons can become a problem, right? Because again, Kyle Wright's a guy who we won't see at all in 2024. We might see him, you know, getting reps, like not reps like reps in games, but just kind of seeing his kind of progress and seeing him pitching maybe at like practice or whatnot.
Yeah.
But you see a guy like Nick Anderson, and you get a chance to see if he can be a kind of player to stay in 2025, or if you make him better, you can trade him away or do whatever you want with them. But again, I think it's a win-win.
Absolutely. And that's what they need. And it's like there's some risk with some of these guys for sure. There's a risk with a guy like Kyle Wright, but you're not going to be able to get Kyle Wright necessarily in a free agency. Like this is a great way for the Royals to get a long-term asset without having to sacrifice much money right now. And they did that with Cole Reagans. It was a risk. It paid off. Hopefully we can get another one that pays off like this with Kyle Wright.
Yeah, Cole. To me, Cole is an example of what the Royals can do. Did you see that tweet? I think it was a couple days ago, where we ranked in the advanced pitching metrics 10th in the MLB, which to me is crazy because we were always known for like doing nothing with pitchers back in the day. But now, even though it's not like overall we have like the 10th best pitching kind of uh, depth in the MLB, to see us be 10th at advanced, it shows that the Royals are committed to those metrics. And again, we talk about it a lot. And when JJ kind of came to Kansas City, even Quatraro, they talked about taking advantage of those advanced stats. And now that we rank 10th, it shows you that, what happened to Cole can happen to any of the pitchers that we get later on.
And it shows that, it's not just lip service. When JJ took over, he's trying to saying, hey, I'm not dating more, and we're going to focus on some more like analytics and focus on that data and really improving that. A lot of people kind of said, oh, he's just saying that because, he's hired and he's trying to build momentum. But when you see like us ranked up there with teams like the Rays, the Orioles, the Dodgers, that's a good thing. Those are organizations that know how to develop, especially pitching at the minor league level. So to see us in that ranking, in that number 10, in the conversation with those teams, I think is really promising. And I think it's also showing that, hey, like we can build a long-term winner here. It's not just going to be, hey, we have a 4-year window and then we're back to losing 90, 95, 100 games for like 10 years.
And while, advanced stats doesn't work for everyone, like a guy like, Brandon Staley from the Chargers, who who was all about the advanced stats and analytics, it does really matter when you're looking at pitchers in the MLB is the advanced stats, because that tells you more about a pitcher than an ERA, than the strikeouts and everything, because it tells you whether or not if a pitcher can be a starter, if they need to be in a certain position. And now to finally see the Royals prioritize that, because don't get me wrong, the Dayton Moore years, those are great. We won a World Series, went to 2 World Series runs, and we prioritize speed. We prioritize more of the athleticism rather than, more of the in-depth details. But it's really just to me, it's just refreshing that the Royals are prioritizing the stats now and are finding players who have potential and can kind of grow in the organization in this kind of just farm. And again, I'm very interested to see how far the Royals go with the advanced stats and the advanced analytics. And again, I'm hoping that the Royals go from 10 to top 5 by the end of the season. Speaking of which, if you want to go real quick,
No,
I
yeah, I
was
was
going
going
to
to say,
introduce you to
and they're hiring more guys. If you looked at like the job postings for the Royals, a lot of those job postings were research and development. So they're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're hiring more people, in addition to focusing it more at the minor league level.
Yeah, and then let's talk about another guy who, again, the Royals got. Let's talk about the drafts that happened. Let's get the rant out of the way. The Royals going sixth in the draft lottery is so bad. Not bad, but like it was a really unlucky moment for the Royals.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the draft lottery because I grew up in Sacramento. I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. The draft lottery and us getting kind of screwed over in the draft lottery is something I'm kind of used to as growing up a Sacramento Kings fan. But the problem is when this lottery, it's supposed to say, oh, we're trying to help teams not tank. Well, the teams are still going to tank. Oakland still tanked. They don't really care. But the draft is so limited in what you can do compared to like an NBA draft. Draft picks, you can only really trade compensation round picks, and that's it in baseball. And that just started last year. So you don't have if you want to have a lottery, you need to be able to have the ability to have flexibility with picks and using that as assets, which you don't have in baseball. And then also too is like when you have a low draft pick, you lose pool money. And so now it's like the Royals are saying, hey, like we want to spend for best available, but they also have multiple other picks that they got to make and they got to sign. And now it's like when you have less money, you can't sign those guys that might be a second or a fifth or a 10th round pick, that you could have before if you had more pool money. And so that's a shame. Is just like I get what MLB is trying to doing, but the Royals are a classic example of they're not. It's draft itself. A lottery is not going to fix that problem. It just makes things just worse, and it's not going to change the tanking. The A's are still going to tank. The Rockies, I don't know. They're not going to do good. Okay, so it's an unfortunate consequence, and the Royals are the kind of ones who get the brunt end of it.
I remember when the draft lottery was happening and they were trying to figure out who's where. I was with my good friend Jackson Ogden. Shout out to Jackson. And we were heading to KU to go call the UMKC versus KU game. And he kept telling me, keep looking at it. Make sure that the Royals are at least top 5. And then we saw that we went 6th. And I had never seen a man get so angry about ping pong balls in my life. And you make a good point, though. The draft lottery is just a weird situation for the MLB because, first of all, you can't even trade those picks. You can't even trade up. You can't trade down. You have to stay put. And while, I see the good in it, I also I can also see the bad in it as well. But if you're the Royals, I mean, I would say at least you got lucky that you didn't get screwed in a really good draft class, like a draft class that has a legit number 1 or it's legit like top 1 to 3. Feels like this draft class in 2024 is more, you can find good guys everywhere instead of, you have 3 guys that are really good and then everyone else is okay. It feels like there's just we can kind of pick out what player we want and we know that player's going to be good. There's just no like legit or solid kind of number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I'm not a big I don't really keep track a lot of college baseball or even just baseball, the draft in general. But from the things that I've seen, it just seems like the Royals got lucky that they didn't get screwed in a year where, there's a legit number 1. So, so with that out of the way, with our little kind of rant aside, let's talk about the Rule 5 draft because we did get one guy, and he is a Yankee, Matt Sauer, a 24-year-old pitcher. Did really well in 2023. I think he went highest. The last he played, he was in Double A. I think he played in Single A maybe. But in his 2023, he was 6'5", 3.41 ERA, had 74 innings pitched, 93 strikeouts, and a 1.15 WHIP. What were your thoughts on the Royals getting a guy like Sauer in the Rule 5 draft?
I like it. The Yankees. The Yankees ranked in that top 10 for advanced pitching metrics. They actually ranked third. So the fact that the Royals have gotten a pitcher from that organization is a good sign. It's like, hey, they're kind of one that knows their stuff. The Yankees do. We've had some success with some of their pitching prospects. Chandler Champlain is a guy who's a top 15 prospect in the Royals system who came from the Yankees in the Andrew Benintendi trade. I like Sauer. He's a fastball curve kind of guy. He has a big spinning curve, which I know is something that seems like the Royals are really prioritizing in their pitchers, whether it's at the major or the minor league level. I also like he's had some injury issues. He hasn't pitched 100. He only pitched 60 or 70 innings last year between Double A and High A. So there is some risk, and I think that's why the Yankees didn't protect him from the Rule 5 draft because of that injury history. But again, you're the Royals. You gotta take some risk here. You gotta be like the Rays. You gotta be like the Reds who do that, and if it pays off, then you got a guy with a lot of financial flexibility who could be a part of your rotation or your bullpen for a long time. This definitely feels a lot like a Brad Keller situation, but I do think I like Sauer's polish a lot more because I think Sauer has more strikeout ability than Brad Keller did when he was a Diamondbacks prospect, and the Royals got him back in 2018.
Yeah, and you even look at last season, he only had 29 walks. I mean, that was just the lowest amount of walks he had in his MILB career. I mean, there were other years he had higher counts in the walk rate. So he is polishing his craft. And again, I think this just shows you that the Royals are trying to find those diamonds in the rough, like Cole. I think again, everything just goes back to Cole Williams because Cole's the guy that no one thought was going to be great, right?
Yeah.
No one thought was going to have this tremendous second half of the season, and even the MLB recognizes it now. Like they're seeing that Cole Reagans is legit, or was legit at least at the end of 2023. And if Cole can repeat that performance, I think the Royals aren't going to be afraid of getting guys like Matt Sauer, guys who are younger, who show promise, but just need a change of scenery. Yeah. And even look at guys that we're moving on from. I mean, I think Austin Cox got DFA'd. Coar leaves. Taylor Clark. We'll talk about that trade later, but pitchers always sometimes need that change of scenery to become better. Even look at, I know this is a terrible example, Garrett Cole. He was with the Pirates. Great. He was okay with Pittsburgh, and then he gets traded to the Yankees, and then he becomes one of the best pitchers in the MLB. Yeah. Like that change of scenery always has to happen for some pitchers to kind of click, for them to click. And I think for Sauer, that might be his kind of clicking moment is coming to Kansas City. So I'm glad the Royals picked him up.
I am too, and I think they had good draft position in the Rule 5. They had the second pick in the Rule 5 draft. I'm glad they took advantage of it. And, they kind of waited to the last minute to free a roster spot to select somebody. But these are the kind of guys you want to get. And like you said, change of scenery. Tyler Glasnow, another guy, was with the Pirates, wasn't very good at the major league level with the Pirates, goes to Tampa, becomes an ace when he's healthy. That's what the Royals need to do. And I keep harping Tampa, but it's like that's something that everybody kind of says, like that's what John Sherman, that's what JJ, they want to build this organization like that. They're starting to do that now with some of their moves this offseason.
I mean, I know this is another bad example, but like Cleveland. Yeah. I mean, Cleveland has done a great job grabbing pitchers who, aren't great and then turns them into aces. Yeah. And, we have now some relationship with some former Cleveland kind of coaches and staff members, and bringing them here to KC, it just shows you that the Royals finally have kind of clicked. Let's move on to Taylor Clark. He gets traded to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Ryan Brady and Cam Devaney. Brady, a pitcher, I think in 2023 he pitched a 2.69 ERA, 6 wins, 4 losses, or 4 wins, 4 losses, and 77.7 innings pitched. He's a guy who I believe he's on the older side, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he's too young, but a guy that easily could fit in AAA, and we could see him called up if needed. But looking at Cam in 2023, he's 26 years old. 11 home runs, 47 RBIs, and then a .271 average. That's a guy too who, in the minors he'll start to slowly develop, and then he might blossom, late in the season or late in his career, kind of like a Whit Merrifield.
Yeah, I like both of the moves. I mean, it's two guys that, for Taylor Clark, who wasn't going to be much of a factor in this bullpen, who possibly could have gotten designated for assignment in spring training. I like Brady. I know the age is an issue. He did go to BYU. He did a Mormon mission, so that was so. The good thing is, he doesn't have mileage on his arm like a guy his age. So you think about it, like, okay, his age is 24, but probably the mileage on his arm is one of like a 22-year-old. So and those kind of things, I think with pitchers, I get less concerned with age, because I think pitchers, you can have a longer career with technology and Tommy John surgery and all those kind of things. So, but I like Brady. Same thing. Limits walks. Cam Devaney, the Royals are kind of stocking up on a lot of these guys in trades. They got Devin Mann from the Dodgers in the Ryan Yarbrough trade, who's kind of like a multi-position guy. Cam Devaney kind of seems like the kind of similar guy. He can play a lot of positions. I think the Royals like that with flexibility. The good thing is he doesn't strike out a lot. Only an 18.2% K rate last year in AAA. So, he struck out a lot previously, 25% the year before, but it shows that he's making adjustments. And, he could be a kind of a guy who could be a surprise, like you said, like a Whit Merrifield type, who's maybe a little bit older, but, just maybe hasn't gotten that opportunity in Milwaukee, where they're kind of like been in the playoff hunt, for the last half decade or so.
Yeah, and I think these are guys that you can, again, I know that for some, Taylor Clark, might have been the best pitcher in the world or whatever you want to call him. But this is another thing that I love of what JG's doing. Is what I love about what he's doing is that he is trading guys who he knows are going to get DFA'd, who are not going to be a piece on this roster. And the fact that he's doing that and getting guys in return, tremendous. I mean, continue to stock up on your minor league team. Continue to kind of bring people for the pipeline. Like, bulk it up, because that is the name of the game if you are a small market team. Is sometimes if you're not able to get those kind of big signings or get those big guys like a Shohei, then you need to rely on your minor league. You need to rely on the development. You need to rely on coaches, everything. Like, development speaks a lot to those small market teams. And for the Royals, it took a while to kind of embrace some of that a little bit more, but now they're doing it and they're spending, which I think is a win-win. But I think this is a great trade. Again, Taylor Clark could have been a guy that could have been cut like that, and we would have gotten nothing. So
yeah.
I'm glad that we got something for him. Another trade, there are a couple more smaller trades that we made. We'll kind of go through them briefly, and then I want to talk about a big topic. Dylan Coleman gets traded to Astros for Carlos Mateo. Mateo in 2023 had a 5.19 ERA, played 7 games, had one game where he started, had 1 save, had 8.2 innings pitched and 12 strikeouts. What were your thoughts on getting a guy like Carlos, who is on the younger side at the age of 20?
Yeah, it's a lottery ticket, and I think those are kind of guys that I don't think Dayton Moore was really willing to trade for. I think his viewpoint was, well, if we're gonna get these young guys, we'd rather just go with the guys that we scouted. And I think that is Mateo going to be a great Royal? I don't know, but I like it. It's a lottery ticket. It has some upside, and like you said, like, we're probably going to I don't know if Dylan Coleman was going to have a big spot in the bullpen anyways. I mean, he had a great 2022, but he had a really bad 2023. His velocity was down. The walks were up. And I think JJ is sending the message of, if you want to pitch in Kansas City, you got to throw strikes. Like, you can't be walking nearly 10 batters per inning for 9 innings and think that you're going to have a spot here long term. So yeah, I like it. I like the fact that they got something for it. I think it makes sense. And like I said, I'm not sure another year in AAA would do Dylan Coleman a whole lot of good. If the Astros are able to turn him around, great. That's awesome. I have no ill will against the guy, but it was obvious that whatever was going on in Kansas City wasn't vibing, and the Royals cashed in while they could, and they got a good pitcher from a good organization in the Astros.
Yeah, I think it's just a great move for the Royals again to really once again kind of try to build something and bring in guys who have the potential. Speaking of which, and then the other move is trading Eduardo Rivares, who you bring in a guy like Hunter Renfroe, and then you have Garrett Hampson, who signs that deal with the Royals and was, JJ has said and Q has said that he's going to play in the outfield. There's always going to be someone who had to leave or had to get traded, and in this case, it was Olivares. He gets traded to the Pirates in exchange for Davis Nadal. Nadal in 2023 didn't have a spectacular season, but did play in Single A. Had 260 at bats, had a .212 batting average, struck out 105 times, had 39 RBIs, 8 home runs, and a .344 OBP. He's a guy too that he doesn't show statistically he's not showing that he's playing great, but that's someone who comes from an organization who has produced great players, who they have been known to scout their players pretty well. And then when you get a guy like Nadal, who again might not show it on the stat sheet but has that potential, that's something else you should get excited about if you're a Royals fan.
Yeah, I was doing some research on managers, especially Matt Quatraro, and Matt Quatraro led the league for managers in stolen base attempts percentage, and especially stolen base attempts percentage for second base. Nadal, 33 stolen bases last year, only caught 4 times. The dude's main tool is speed, so I think that the Royals, they want to keep guys who can make things happen on the base paths. I think that's something they've had success with in their organization. I think Q is a manager that's going to promote that, so Nadal fits into that. In terms of Olivares, though, I've always been sort of a fan of his, but at the same time, like, he was unplayable defensively. I mean, it was not like he's sort of bad. He was very unplayable. The metrics show it. Whatever you look at, DRS, OAA, UZR, it wasn't good. And last year, he really was only playing in the outfield like in emergency situations. The Royals kind of just had to pick their poison, and they're like, okay, we have Benji Melendez is developing as an outfielder. I think he'll be better, but he wasn't great last year. Nelson Velasquez, not great. Hunter Renfroe, good arm, range isn't there. You can't have 4 outfielders that can't play defensively out there, and unfortunately, Olivares doesn't have the pop that Renfroe or Velasquez or Melendez have, and thus Olivares was the odd man out.
Yeah, and even you think about some of the younger guys, Samad Taylor and Blanco, you can't nudge those guys out at this point because they've shown they have produced for the Royals. And even if it means they have to kind of be bench players or be a Terrence Gore or Gerard Dyson, that's fine by me. And at least those guys bring something. Yeah. That's why I'm glad that, again, not that I'm happy that a guy got traded out of KC or whatnot, but I'm just happy that the Royals made the right move by trading away Olivares because, again, he has produced offensively at times. He's had his moments. He had his kind of. I think he blew up I think a home run. He blew up the scoreboard or something like that.
Yeah, I was there for that.
You were? Yeah, I think that light was smoking at the end.
Yeah,
it was crazy. But again, as much as like he has those moments, very well too that guys like Blanco, Taylor, they're going to do more for you offensively, even if it means that they're not getting a lot of at-bats, even if they're not getting a lot of reps on the outfield. At least that, base path-wise, they're going to play their roles and play their roles well. So, again, sucks that he has to go, but another good trade. So I want to talk lastly, because we kind of didn't talk a lot about him, but Chris Stratton, Rangers guy who just won a World Series. Congrats to him. And he comes to Kansas City as well. 2 wins, 1 loss, 3.92 ERA. He's played 64 games, had 1 save, 82.2 innings, pitched 81 strikeouts. Another guy who can play right in the middle of the rotation, or just again beefs up the bullpen. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts are on getting a current, just past World Series winner and a good pitcher in Stratton to come to KC. 2-year
Yeah,
deal for $8 million, by the way.
yeah. Again, it gives the Royals depth. It's going into this offseason, you're saying, okay, who's the bullpen? It's James MacArthur, who was good for a month, but we're not sure what he can do otherwise. And then it was Carlos Hernandez, who was good for like a month in May and then struggled. And then it was just a lot of what ifs. Stratton, is he a closer? I don't know. But he's a guy that has experience in setup roles, spot closing. He gives Q another arm in the bullpen that can be effective. He's got the profile that the Royals like: low walks, good amount of strikeouts. He gives the ball. He allows a little bit more fly balls than you'd like, but again, it's he's still, like, he previously was more of a ground ball pitcher, so I wonder if that comes back. But overall, like, Stratton is a guy that really doesn't pop out in a lot of fans' heads as somebody who's effective. But if you look at his resume, and the guy's been pretty consistent, especially since 2020. He's posted solid ERA numbers. He had a 1.1 FR last year. It's the kind of move that the Royals might not get a lot of buzz about, but it makes their bullpen instantly better for 2024.
Now, with that being said, let's talk about the future for a bit before we kind of leave the show, because we look at all the moves that we've made. A lot of the moves that we have made are for 2024 and 2025. So my question for you, Kevin, and I'll chime in as well, is will the Royals compete only in 2024 and 2025, or do you see the Royals kind of try to compete for 3 to 5 years?
I wrote about this in a post, I think before, or I think when I came back from my trip to California, seeing family. You look at the Diamondbacks and the Rangers, the two teams that faced each other in the World Series. They both had 100-loss seasons in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
2022 was incremental. Arizona won 74 games, Texas won 68. I think the Royals are doing what they can to get to that level. I'm not saying they're going to win a pennant. I'm not saying they're going to win a World Series in 2025, but I think they're taking those steps to say, hey, we're going to be not going to be a 56 win team, and we're also doing it the right way. But the thing that gets really lost, everybody talks about the Rangers free agent signings. Texas has a good farm system. They've had a good farm system for a while, and they're building it, and they're a very analytics heavy organization. Nobody sees that with like the Marcus Semien deals and the Corey Seager deals and the Jacob deGrom deals, but Texas is really kind of like a Los Angeles Dodgers light in terms of how they're run as an organization. I think we're starting to see the Royals do that. I think the nice thing about the Royals is we're seeing that John Sherman is willing to spend.
Mm-hmm.
He is not Jerry Reinsdorf. He is not John Fisher of the A's. He is not the kind.
You're
He
right.
is not like all this talk about. Hey, he doesn't want to win. This offseason showed it.
Yeah.
And I think he's saying, hey, but we're going to spend the right way, and we're going to build a long-term winner, because Sherman knows that, and so I think we have a foundation that we can be set up so we can be a long-term winner. We can be a small market team that can overcome those odds, that have a good farm system but still spend on free agents, like a Cleveland, like a Milwaukee, like a Baltimore, and I feel like we're more set up now than we've ever had before.
Yeah, Kev. Besides all the stuff I do, sports wise, I work at a cheese shop here in Kansas City called the Better Cheddar. Shout out to them. And I love to talk to customers about what their thoughts are on the Royals. Because it's something that I like to kind of hear and kind of see what they're thinking about. And a lot of just common Kansas City citizens are saying, "Wow, I've never seen the Royals spend that much in a while." And I think that, again, just kind of proves my point here in saying that this is a huge first step for Kansas City. Like, I know it's not crazy moves, and I know that we're not signing, big guys, or we haven't even made the biggest possible move, which is getting Bobby Witt back for a long-term extension. But this is that first step into becoming like a team like the Rays, like Baltimore, because it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a matter of one off season. It happens in multiple off seasons. And I know that John Sherman has bigger motivations for spending money, obviously in the stadium, but he also is proving like, hey, listen, if I know my team can win, I'm going to do what it takes to help my team win. And we haven't seen that in a long time. We haven't seen a Royals team compete in forever. I mean, it nearly is going to be 10 years since we've competed, legit, and I know it's only 2024, but 2025, that's the 10-year anniversary that we won a World Series. And even then, you can even take it into account. It's been 10 years since we've been to the World Series for the first time, and then forever.
Yeah. And it's 10 years since our last winning season. I mean, there's no that too. So
yeah. So you look at what John is doing now, and you look at getting JJ to be the GM, getting someone like Matt to be the skipper for the Royals. I mean, those are baby steps. And I think Dayton leaving, that was kind of like the getting off the plane and kind of settling and letting that sunrise kind of and just let it take care of its own. And now we're starting to rebuild and set a new identity for the franchise for Kansas City. So again, I think for this season too, and I know it's a weak AL Central, and I think these moves do help to push for that. But I also think it's not going to be like a 1-year thing.
Right.
I truly think, and I don't know if this is me on copium or not, but I truly believe that Kansas City is trending towards being a competitive team for years to come. And when that new stadium comes, when we show, like, again, Mariners back in the day, when they just became a franchise and they wanted a new stadium in Seattle, and Seattle was like, no, we're not going to give you the money to do this. And then they go on that miraculous postseason run, and then Seattle gives them the money. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens in KC. I wouldn't be shocked if KC says no originally, and then the Royals go on a postseason run, whether it be in 2024 and 2025, and then Kansas City gives them the money to build a stadium in downtown or wherever they want it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, you go, Kev.
A lot of it's just make it. We've seen from this postseason, just make the postseason. Once you make the postseason, anything can happen. The Diamondbacks showed that if you make it, you can. All you need to do is just to make it. And so, I'm with expanded playoffs, that gives the Royals hope. So like I said, I think that could happen. And I think, does Sherman probably say, hey, I want to get some momentum for the stadium, but you know what? I got to give him credit. He's showing it with his pocketbook right now. So,
yeah, and again, I think Sherman's just the kind of guy that he at least is showing that he's different from other GMs in the past for Kansas City, and he is spending money. With that being said, Kev, it's about to be the end of the show. You got anything going on as the Royals reporter?
Well, I'll be hoping to have my first post probably of the year, hopefully sometime tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. I will be revealing my top 30 prospects from my end. And I'm not prospect expert. Preston Farr, Farm to Fountains, he does a fantastic job with that. There's other guys out there like Jared Perkins and Alex Duvall and the guys from Royals Weekly who do a great job covering prospects, and Jacob Milham from Kings of Kaufman. But I do have my own prospect list that I will be kind of sharing on Wednesday or Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that post.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I don't have much going on. It's going to be a chill week and a half before I go back to school. But we thank you guys for joining us tonight, I should say, on Kansas City Chase to the Pennant, or Kevin Cristian Chase to the Pennant, however you want to call it. But we appreciate you guys joining us. And hopefully, maybe the Royals make a big move this week. I
never know.
But
never know.
You never know now. But thank you guys for joining us as we chase the pennant. I'm Cristian Martinez. That's been Kev. We'll catch you guys next time.